Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, A Gardener's Journey Homestead, and welcome back to this series. This is part 5 of a 6-part series, so we are almost near the end. So this series is all about how to start your first garden. This is something that is near to and dear to my heart because just 4 years ago, I had never put my hands in dirt. But now for 4 years, I have been growing food, and I want to do this series to help you feel safe and confident that you too can grow food. Because if I can grow food, you can grow food too. So if you have missed parts 1 through 4, go back to the playlist and make sure that you catch those parts. I have specifically done this playlist and this series very thoughtfully and in order. So if you are starting from ground zero, scratch like I was, you can literally go from the first video all the way to video 6 and know exactly what you need to do to start your first garden. So whenever you're watching this, it may be in the spring and you're excited about your first summer garden. It may be in the fall. Whenever you're watching this, I want to first just let you know, kudos to you for making the decision to grow your own food. There is nothing like growing your own food. It has been such a privilege and a joy for me to be able to provide food for my family and also for my local community. So my name is Barbara, and like I said, 4 years ago, I had never put my hands in dirt. We moved to the country. We live in Tennessee, and my first garden was pretty much obligatory, meaning I feel like we moved to the country, we had all this land, and I said, well, people in the country have gardens, so I guess I should have a garden, huh? And so my husband and my son built me 4 raised beds. That is where my garden started, and 4 years later, it has quite done the expansion. I'm standing right now in my high tunnel that's 30 by 96. We have 5 raised beds behind the house now. This high tunnel, and then we also have a in-ground outside garden space that's 4,000 square feet that we use just in the summertime. So needless to say, I've been growing a lot of food. But let's talk about what this series today is all about. So part 5 is all about planning your garden. Now, that may not sound sexy. It may sound like planning, like I want to get to it. I want to put some stuff in the ground. I understand. But I can tell you from experience that the better you plan, the better your results will be. So if you go back from the beginning, in video 1, we talked about what were your goals? Like, why are you growing food? And getting your mindset right. And let me go look at my notes. In video 2, we talked about what were you going to plant in. So I went through the different mediums, raised beds, containers, in ground, in a pot. I went through all of that, and you should have decided what you're going to plant in. And we talked about growing and planting zones, because that determines what you can plant where you live, where you are, and how long your growing season is. I'm in zone 7B. I have a very long summer growing season. It's 100 plus days, but you may live in a much, much colder climate where you don't have a long growing season. That means that what you and I grow may be different. Some things may be the same, but some things may be different. Okay. In video 3, we talked about deciding what you're going to plant. I asked you to think about what are the things that your family likes to eat? What are the things that you buy at the grocery store? In video 4, the last video, we talked about getting our supplies. So we got to make sure, even the Bible says that before you build a house, you count the cost. You get your stuff together, you budget, you figure out what you're going to need in order to get the job done. It's the same when it comes to your garden. So we talked about getting your seeds, getting where to buy seeds, getting your fertilizer, getting your things for insect maintenance. And so now in this video, we're almost at the stage where we can go plant. But the first thing that we need to do is to plan. So in this video, I want to talk about the importance of garden planning. The first thing that I want you to do is to determine now, okay, in video 2, you talked about what you were going to plant in. In video 3, you decided what you were going to plant, right? So let's say you decided I have 2 raised beds. That's all I have. And I've decided I'm going to plant tomatoes, peppers, and basil. Okay. Let's just use that for an example. So now you know what you're going to plant in and what you're going to plant. So when it comes to planning, you're going to decide where those crops are going to go. Okay. So if you have 3 raised beds, then you know the amount of space you have, you know the dimensions, and you know this is what I'm going to plant. When you don't do this, let me tell you what happens. Either you don't buy enough or you buy too much. And if you buy too much, this is what's going to happen. You're going to try to squeeze all your stuff in there because what? You've paid for the seed. You've grown the seed. You've bought the transplant. And you're going to want to make sure that everything fits because you paid your money for it. And then when you don't plan or buy enough, then you have a bed that's half utilized or that's underutilized. Okay? Now, when I'm shooting this video, it is actually the first week of December. So it is like 30 degrees outside, but it's 80 degrees in the tunnel. I had my jacket on, but it got warm. But as the breeze is coming in, I'm feeling the breeze and it feels good as long as the breeze don't last more than 5 seconds. So if you see me come back with my jacket on, that's the reason why. Because it is the first week of December when I'm shooting this video. So back to planning your space. No matter what space you have, whether it's 15 pots, 1 pot, 3 beds, 10 beds, plan where you're going to plant your stuff. So that way, when it's time to plant, you are not second guessing. You have a plan and that you know that you have enough adequate space to meet your needs and make sure that you plant enough. So here is how I plan. You don't have to do it this way, but I would invite you to adopt some measure of this way. 1, your head is not good enough. Do not think in your head, oh, I'm gonna do dot. Now, if you got 1 pot, that may be okay. But if you have multiples, write it down. So let me show you it again. This may seem fancy. It ain't fancy. This is how I plan all of my stuff. Now, again, I got multiple spaces, but I do this for every space, every single season. This is basically a pictorial representation of the back of my house. In the back of my house, you've seen on the videos, I have 5 raised beds. So this is all this is representing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 raised beds. So when I go to plan my garden, I am literally writing down what I'm going to plant in each bed, where it's going to go. And so I number my beds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know, okay, this is going to be bed 3. Now, because I have been gardening for a few years, I rotate my crops. If this is your first garden, you don't have any crops to rotate, right? But your second year of gardening, you will rotate your crops, meaning you don't want to plant the same exact thing in the same exact bed if you can help it. Now, sometimes that is not possible. That's okay. Don't let it stop you from gardening. But if you can, you rotate. But let's say we're going to plan. So back in our example, let's say you have, I think we said 2 raised beds, 3 raised beds. Let's just say 2. Okay, so let's just say you have 2 raised beds and you want to plant tomatoes, peppers, basil, and some marigolds. Okay, so 2 flowers, no, a flower, a herb, and 2 vegetables. Let's just keep it simple. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out, okay, what are your dimensions of your space and how many plants can you put in each one? But first, let's talk about where things are going to go. So if you have tomatoes, peppers, basil, and marigold, okay? One of the things that you want to think about is the space of your container, your bed, your hole, like wherever you're planting. How many plants can you get in there? But the first thing that you have to know is what you're going to plant. Then you have to know what are the spacing requirements for each plant. Now, obviously on this video, I don't have time to go through every crop and tell you what the spacing is. I actually do have a chart that is, I don't have it where I can link it here because it would be hard for me to, I don't think I can attach in YouTube. But anyway, if you come to, I will be doing a class on this topic in live, meaning you'll have me talking with you through your garden planning. If you come to that workshop, then obviously you'll get the materials. But if not, just Google it. So when it comes to spacing, different things have different spacing. Like certain things need room to grow depending on how they're going to grow. So for example, when you are planting lettuce, usually lettuce is about 6 inches apart. That's not very far. Now you can plant them that close together if you want to have what they call baby lettuce, meaning you're just, you don't intend to harvest the full head. If you do what we call cut and come again, like you go cut some lettuce, take it in your house, you eat it for a salad, you come back next week and you get you some more lettuce. That's what we call cut and come again, okay? That means I am just taking off the top, I'm taking off the outer leaves, and the lettuce is going to continue to grow. We call that like a baby lettuce, meaning it's not going to get that big because you don't mean to cut off the whole head. Now, if you want to grow a head of romaine lettuce and you intend to harvest it as a head, meaning cut it from the base and take the whole head in the house, then you need more space in between your lettuce. Hopefully that makes sense, okay? So when it comes to spacing, lettuce can be planted close together. Onions, 6 inches apart. Garlic, 6 inches apart. But when it comes to tomatoes on average are 24 inches or 2 feet apart. Why? Because they have roots that grow really deep in the ground and they need space to grow. If you don't know the spacing, look on the back of your seed packet. It will tell you what is on the back of it'll tell you the spacing on the back of your seed packet. Or you can Google it. So, know the dimensions of the space where you're going to plant. Know what the spacing is for the crops that you have. Then you figure out how many can I get in there, okay? And I'm trying to make this as simple as I know how and break it down because this is what I wish somebody would have done for me. I am saving you a lot of headache, a lot of time, and a lot of steps. So going back to this example, if I have 2 beds, and let's just say, so my beds are 4 by 8, right? So 4 by 8, so they are 4 feet this way, 8 feet the long way. So 8 feet times 12, that's what, 96 inches, okay? 96 inches. So for quick math, let's say I have a crop that I need to space 8 inches apart, right? That means that I can get 12 of them in one row. Does that make sense? Because 12 times 8 is 96. So if this whole length is 96 inches and I need to space my plants 8 inches apart, I know I can get 12 on one row. If it's 4 feet across and I need 2 feet in between each of the rows, then I know I can get 2 rows of 12. So 12 here, 12 there. I can put 24 plants in this bed. Does that make sense? If not, pause it, go back. Go back, make sure that you get this. So when it comes to spacing, you have spacing in between plants, and then you have what you call row spacing. So the spacing in between plants is within the row. So if I'm planting a row and this packet tells me 8 inches apart, that means I'm going to drop a seed, and then 8 inches from that, I'm going to drop another seed, and then another seed after 8 inches, and another seed. Hopefully that makes sense. Or a plant. Then when it says row spacing, that means, okay, I've done this whole row. I have 12 plants in my row. Now I want to do another row in the same bed. I need to go 24 inches from this row to start my next row. So again, I'm going to plant a seed, 8 inches, another seed, 8 inches, another seed, 8 inches, another seed. Hopefully that makes sense. So going back, figure out what you're going to plant in each bed. Know your beds or your container, your pot, whatever you're planting. Know the dimensions. Know the dimensions of the spacing that you need for your crop within the row and in between rows. That way you can plant it on paper. So that means if I have these 2 beds, I can get 24 plants in this bed. If I don't know that and I have not planned, let's say I put them 6 inches apart where they really should be 8 inches apart. Then you're going to complain and say, well, my onions were too small. They didn't bulb up because you didn't give them enough space, right? Or my tomatoes, the roots or something got they didn't work right because you didn't give them enough space, right? Or you go and buy, 5 transplants to fill up your bed and you got them, 2 feet apart within the row. You're underutilizing your space. You could have had more crops. You could have had more stuff. Okay? So that is what I mean about planning your garden space. The next thing that you need to think about is what we call companion planting. Companion. So think about it this way. Like my husband is my companion. We go together. When you see me, you see him. We work well together. We've been married for 26 years. Companion. So when you think about companion planting, you are thinking and planting things that complement each other, that go well together. There are certain plants that do not go well together, meaning they don't need to be in the same bed all up on each other or beside each other. And it could be because one plant attracts a certain insect that's going to feed on the plant right beside it. It could be because they both are very heavy feeders of the same type of nutrient. So when you think about beans and tomatoes, they're very heavy nitrogen feeders, okay? So typically you would not put your beans and your tomatoes together in the same bed, like all up on each other, because your soil is going to be depleted just like that. The other thing to think about when it comes to companion planting is not just two vegetables beside each other, but vegetables and flowers, flowers and herbs, vegetables and herbs. Okay? So going back to our example, if we're going to plant tomatoes, peppers, basil, and marigold and basil are great companion plants for tomatoes and peppers. They all love each other. They all go together, right? Again, if you come to one of my workshops, I give you a whole book that has all of this stuff in it, a companion guide, a seed spacing guide, all of that stuff. But if not, you can Google it. Google companion plant for tomatoes, and it will give you a list of things that go well with tomatoes. It will give you also a list of things that don't go well with tomatoes, okay? So when it comes to planting, you're going to, again, write down. So I may put, let's say, 12 tomatoes. Again, tomatoes is not a good example because they're not 8 inches apart. But let's say it's a crop that's 8 inches apart. I may say I'm going to put, 12 basil, and then I'm going to put, 12 lettuces right here, whatever the case may be, right? Do what makes sense, meaning obviously lettuce and basil wouldn't go together because basil is a summer crop and then lettuce is a cold weather crop, but you get the point. That's how you would plan out your space. You may say, hey, I'm going to do basil, lettuce, basil, lettuce, basil, lettuce, basil, lettuce, or basil, pepper. Like, you may alternate. That's all good too. Just plan it out so that you know how many seeds you need or how many plants you need. And I always say err on the side of extra. So if you've planned out your space and you know that you need 12 tomatoes, I would go ahead and buy 14 to 15 tomatoes in case 2 don't act right. 2 get dead before you get home if you're buying transplants. Like, always err on the side of extra because something may happen. Even with the best gardeners, something can happen, okay? If you have questions about what I've just said, please put it down below. If you have something that does not make sense, put it down below. I will come in and I will answer your question. I want to make sure that you get this, okay? Let me look at my paper just to make sure I did not miss anything. Okay? So, just as a recap, now I want you to go and plan your space. You don't have to have this all printed out. You can write it down on a piece of paper. If you have 5 pots, then just make 5 circles on your paper and put what you're going to put in each pot. Think about the spacing that you have. Think about the spacing between the plants, and think about what you're going to plant. You may find yourself like, oh, I want to plant I want to plant cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, and squash all in the summer, but I don't have but 2 beds. Then you may have to decide, hey, let me get somebody to build me another bed. Let me go buy another bed, or I may not be able to plant some of those things. Do not overcrowd your plants. Like, don't be trying to put everything in one bed. I have a cousin who grew a garden this summer, and she had big plans, right? And then she's like, I'm doing all this, and I'm like, that's too much. And of course, no, this is what I'm doing. That's what she did. But she ain't had no food. Okay? She had cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, squash, and like 2 other things, all in this like 4x4 space. It's not going to grow. Plants have to have the proper amount of space. There's a reason why you plant tomatoes 24 inches apart and you can plant lettuce 6 inches apart. It's because of how they grow, how their root system, all of that stuff matters. And so I want you to be comfortable with knowing what is what. Look at the back of your packet. We talked about in the last video how some seed packets give you more information than others. Johnny Seeds is great about giving you a lot of information. Botanical Interest, they put a lot of information on the back of their packets. If not, you can always Google it, okay? You can always Google it. So what I want to know now is put in the comments below, when it comes to your garden planning, do you feel comfortable that you have enough space for what you need for your first garden, right? And it let me know if this was helpful in terms of your planning. So we have one more video left, and in that video, we're going to talk about actually putting our stuff in the ground. We're almost there, but don't miss this step. Do this step first, and then in the next video, we'll talk about actually planting the stuff and how to maintain your crops in your first garden. I hope that this series has been so helpful for you. I hope that you are right on track. If not, please put your questions down below. If you have not subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe, and also share this video, this series, this playlist with somebody else that you know that wants to grow food. Remember, gardening is a journey. Let's grow together. I'll see you next time, friend.